Scream 6 brings the survivors of the requel to New York City for another round of scary phone calls and bloody murder. But let's be honest, if the filmmakers weren't complete cowards, they would have called this Ghostface Takes Manhattan. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter and join me, as always, is Tim.
Peace and love to all my followers out there. Hope you're doing well.
This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a horror movie, and this is a slightly notable episode because Tim's actually on paternity leave still, but he's parachuted in from parts unknown for a one-off episode right now, and then he's going back to paternity leave. But he did get a chance to go and see Scream 6, which is what we're going to talk about today. The film that should be called Ghostface Takes Manhattan, and they are cowards for not using that title. But yes, welcome. So, we'll get into it. We'll start spoiler-free, of course, like we always do. Although it is worth mentioning that since it's a sequel, there's a good chance that even the spoiler-free section will probably spoil something from the previous film, just because that's all knowledge for the start of the movie anyway. So, but spoilers for Scream 6 will be warned before we go into them. So yes, so welcome to the show. All right, so it's a year after Scream 5, and did Scream 5 come out last year? Was that last January?
I believe it did, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, because this was relatively quick turnaround.
This was a quick turnaround, yeah. So...
And it's not, and I mean, I could be wrong, but I believe it was a similar turnaround for the first and second movie as well.
No, you're right, yeah, because it was 96, then 97. Yeah, so if we follow that logic, it means Scream 7 will be 3 years away, because for some reason Scream 3 took extra time. That's the one that took all the time with, that quality film. Excellent stuff. So, yeah, I mean, as far as premise goes, obviously, I can't really spoil too much. It's simple. The sisters, the Carpenter sisters, Sam and Tara, are living in New York, as are the other survivors from Scream 5, brother-sister duo of Mindy and Chad. The core four, you might say, are living in New York. Most of them are going to college there. Everyone except Sam, who's just kind of there living with her sister, basically. So, Ghostface... or a Ghostface, I should say. It's not like Ghostface is one person this whole time. Starts terrorizing and killing people, and there you have it. That's the premise.
Good job.
I mean, what else do you say for a Scream sequel at this point? Especially since this one's whole selling point really is, they're in New York now. It's a new setting, it's fresh. Maybe they'll do something fun with the location, and we'll get to it. So, yeah, I suppose there's not really much to say before I just ask the question. Tim?
So did you forget how to do this? You seem very out of whack.
I just woke up from a nap, alright? Give me peace. I'm readjusting myself here.
You're tired, I'm sick. This is going to be great.
Yeah, but we've not recorded an episode in like 2 months, so we're raring to go. It's the juices are flowing.
You've been watching too much sci-fi crap with Tara. All right. Finally get some horror back in your veins, and it should excite you.
Tim, how did you feel about Scream 6?
I loved it. I was I'm not even gonna beat around the bush. I was pretty happy with this. So we probably talked about it in the previous episodes, but I'm not like a huge Scream guy, especially compared to like other people of our generation. Like a lot of people around our age who are they're kind of like mid late 30s or whatever now. Like for them, like Scream was kind of like the first, like new franchise that kind of came out like while they were growing up and that they got to see. So I feel like there's a lot of people that hold it like near and dear to their heart. But I don't know, I guess, I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way, but like, I don't know, for me, like I was still like more clinging on to like the 80s franchises and stuff. Like I never really took a hold of me as it does some other people, but I still like it. Like, I like the original quite a bit, and then the sequels you can kind of take or leave, but there's fun stuff in them. But when we did the review for the one last year, I actually was surprised by how much I liked it. Especially given that the people that made it, the Radio Silence guys, I didn't really like their previous film, Ready or Not, that much. So yeah, it surprised me how much I liked it, and I think essentially it was had to do with this cast of new characters, as you said, the core four, as they're kind of now being named. I find them very likable and charming, and I like following them, and I think all the the actors that play them are like really good and likable, and it's that mixed with kills that I think are really good, and as always, there's like a mystery about what's going on that I felt interesting and compelling. So we're a little mixed between us. I like the last one a bit more than you did, so I'm interested to see what you thought of this one. But for me, this was just another case of like, oh yeah, I'm really liking what they're doing. It's pretty much everything I liked about the last one, but just kind of amped up to a degree. And I think just setting it in New York is just a really good move, and makes it feel a lot fresh, and gave it some nice new like set pieces, including one that probably had what I think a lot of people are going to come away with as saying one of the best kills in the movie, which we'll get to in spoilers. But I think there was a lot of fun to be had. Now it's obviously it's not a perfect movie. I think there's story-wise, there's like a lot of stuff you can nitpick, where you can say like, how did this person not know this person, or like some people might have issues with the reveal of who Ghostface is in this, and I think there's some character stuff that I don't necessarily like, but these are all just like very minor, like small things that honestly, like, as I'm watching the movie, like, they don't really, like, I understand why people might not like it as much, but like, I don't know, it doesn't change the fact that basically as I was watching the movie, I was kind of with it, on board from the start, and it kept my attention, kept me happy and interested and all the way through, and had some really cool kills, some nice subversions, including an opening that Scream's kind of known for its openings, and I thought it had a really cool, interesting take on this one that something we haven't seen before. So yeah, I was very happy with this one. I liked it a lot, even though there's some faults which it's kind of hard to get into without going into spoilers. But yeah, I'd say a big thumbs up for me. Maybe if I do have one complaint, it's just like, man, this is another great Halloween set movie that for some reason we're watching in March. Like, it would have been nice to see this in October, but then of course you would have had to wait longer, so I don't know. I guess that's maybe not too much of a fault, but it's just always fun to me when you have like these great movies that have like a Halloween setting, but then they're just never released around Halloween. But whatever.
Yeah, I would say that at least this isn't primarily set in Halloween. Like, it starts off set in Halloween, but like it's not too long into the movie before we're kind of beyond that. Well, no, that's not entirely true. But yeah, okay. I can kind of see what you're saying. I think there's an argument for almost any horror movie to come out in October. But if all horror movies did that, then they would have tons of them in October, and they'd all be competing with each other, and they wouldn't do that well. So the way I look at it,
that's very true,
is that be glad that there's enough of an appetite for horror that we get consistent horror releases all year round.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Admittedly, this one is set at Halloween, which the franchise, to be fair, is not known for that though, because like this is the first one I think is set at Halloween. I don't think any of the other ones are.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
One's definitely not. Two's not. Three's definitely not. 4.
Like, I don't know. I weirdly think of it as kind of a Halloween movie, but maybe it's just because that like Halloween mask is so synonymous with like Halloween costumes that you see.
Oh yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I can't really think of any other ones that specifically like, take place around then. I mean,
obviously you see them watching Halloween in the first movie. Right. Our two sisters are now, carpenters. There's a character, there was a character called Billy Loomis. So I mean, there's a lot of things that make you think of the movie Halloween. But yeah, so yeah, I wasn't as hot on the last one. I thought it was like fine. It had some moments, but there was definitely some things that drug it down a little bit for me. I like this one more than the last one. I do still have things to criticize. I have some things, you know. I do think the third act goes into some comical places. I think there's one actor in this who stands out to me as being particularly bad.
Interesting.
So we'll talk about that later, especially in spoilers. One of my complaints of the last movie actually is that I didn't think Sam was that good of a character. I thought she was bland compared to the other leads, and even just as from an acting perspective, I thought she kind of struggled at times. I still think she's the weakest of the main characters, but I will say she didn't have she didn't really have any moments this time where I felt cringy with her acting. So I guess that's an improvement. Like I didn't. Whereas last time I remember like her talking to Tara when she's in the hospital bed and they were supposed to have an emotional sister fight, and I was just kind of like smirking a little bit because her performance was kind of bad CW levels. But I do think the location really freshened things up, and honestly, I think not having that many characters come back was also a big. By that I mean the legacy characters. Sure. Obviously, Courteney Cox is in this as Gale, and honestly, I think there's a couple of her moments are actually some of the most forced to me. There's a. I was gonna say there's a moment where they kind of feel the need to address why Sydney's not showing up, and I actually thought it just like it would have been better if you just not mentioned it because she's sort of like, because one of them says, "Is Sydney coming?" and she's like, "No, Sydney's went to Hayden with her family and she deserves happiness," and I'm like, I wasn't even questioning it. Why would she come to New York when Ghost? It was weird that she showed up in the last one.
Yeah, they. I mean, I know why they did it, but I feel like that. Excuse me. Yeah, like I think it makes more sense like to have like Dewey and Gale like in the last one, but yeah, Sydney definitely felt forced. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of wish that she actually hadn't showed up and that just let her story go. Like
so you know, there's a couple of moments like that with Gale. Not that all of Gale stuff's bad by any means.
Yeah, and I do like. I mean, I guess we'll get more into spoilers, but it does feel like they kind of went back on her character a little bit because I feel like her characters had like growth throughout the series, and then in this one it kind of felt like they were like we need her to be like the bitchy Gale from like the first movie again. I
feel like they've done that multiple times in this series. Like I feel like she's learned that lesson of being more of a human and less of like a I need to write my book character who doesn't give a shit. Like she's gained her humanity multiple times, but seems to always revert back to just being Gale Weathers from the first movie again.
It's kind of like a weird comparison, but it's kind of like the Human Torch from like the Fantastic Four. Like the the only trait like he ever really has is that he's like immature. So like whenever a new writer comes on the Fantastic Four, like one of the things they do is like oh, we're gonna like have him grow up and like like become serious and get a job and like try to act older and stuff. But it's like one of those things where it's like. Yeah, that's all like anyone ever thinks to do with them. So it's like every time you get like a new writer, a new arc, they just kind of like reset, and then it's like, oh yeah, he's gonna do this again, even though, I mean, you can probably say that for like a lot of comic book characters too, but yeah, I get what you're saying with that though.
Yeah, but I think the location's used fairly well. It had part of the reason why I like this more, because I wouldn't necessarily say the rating's that much stronger than last movie. It is a bit stronger, but I think for me. It's the set pieces are far more exciting and enjoyable. I think they use some different locations in really fun ways. I also agree that the opening is actually very good. In fact, I might go as far to say it's the best opening since the first movie.
Wow, yeah.
And that's the thing. It was doing all right, but there's a key moment, and you'll know what I'm talking about without me spoiling it for everyone until we get to spoilers. But there's a key moment where it does something genuinely interesting, and you're like, oh, okay, all right. That's an interesting because
Okay, so are you officially giving it the key moment of the episode?
The key moment of the episode?
Yeah. Do you want to officially? Do you want to officially make the opening the key moment of the episode?
Tim, why are you saying this like it's this thing we always do? We have literally never given a key moment of the episode. It surely would be a key moment of the movie, if anything. What?
I thought it was something we could start doing, but I guess you're not feeling it, so
we can start. I don't mind giving like maybe you could rename it to sound a bit more horror-esque,
the Lee moment.
Sure, Tim. Yes, it's the
after Scream Queen Jennifer Jason Lee.
Not Jamie Lee Curtis, no.
No,
Jennifer Jason Lee is the one we're going with.
Of course.
Yeah. Oscar winner Jamie Lee Curtis. So that things have happened in the world since you were last on a Screams recording, too.
It's true. Who would have thought that Halloween Ends would have scored Oscar gold? With her infamous line, what was it, like, grab life by the tits or something like that? Did she say something like that in Halloween Ends?
I think she did. I don't know if that was exactly it, but I'd forgotten whatever it was, but you're sparking a memory, yeah. She says that to her granddaughter, I think.
Yeah.
Go out and get laid, granddaughter. If you want a gangbang, have a gangbang. Life's too short. Anyway, so no, the opening's very good. I will say one of the problems I always have with Scream, although I think it's actually worse in this one, but it just bothered me less, is the motivation for the killer is like some of the most just okay. I'll go with it.
Yeah, here's the thing is I think if you want to enjoy these movies, like there's an element of camp to them, and I think you just kind of got to let it go, because I think some people get too caught up in like this is such a convoluted way that this person is doing this or whatever, and I don't know, like I can see if it bothers you, it bothers you, but I think this is a sixth entry in this series, and we've had like some really crazy like killer reveals, and I think you just gotta go with it and just look at it as camp and not expect too much. But
yep. I mean
that's just my point of view. I mean, obviously, like everyone has their own take. If you don't like it, that's fine. But
no, I mean, I think there's an element of having to just go with it. There's, I mean, obviously as we talk.
Oh, wait, is this the official just go with it moment of the episode?
How many monikers are we giving out an episode now, Tim? What is this?
I don't know. I don't know what young kids like nowadays. Like, I feel like they like awards and prestige and stuff, and you got to have like, I don't know, stuff like that to give out every episode.
I mean, I don't mind having some things to give out, but you're surprising me with some of your random ones here, Timmy. I'm not gonna lie.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I'll let myself out.
So, yeah, I do think I have some nitpicks. I have some things like I don't think it's like a groundbreaking horror movie, but I definitely had a bit more fun than 5. I think that it obviously has a little bit of that meta commentary stuff. There's a scene where they talk about some rules and what type of movie they're in, but it's not as heavy as last time. And it's one of those things where, while it was really appealing in the first Scream, I don't necessarily need them to like go over the top with it anymore. Like at this point, like you've established, how many times can we come up with a new like type of movie we're in? Okay, we had the requel, and there's a speech in this that kind of relates to we're in a long running franchise now because this is like the 6th one. So it's like, what the hell are you going to have a character say for number 7? Like at that point, like, you're still a franchise. Nothing's changed.
It's there's specific rules for the 7th entry in a movie series. Like, is there really? Okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong though. If they come back in the next movie and say that there has to be a telepath because it's the 7th one, I will applaud them. I will give them a standing ovation. But they technically did the 8th Friday the 13th with this one, so interesting couple of comparison points to Jason Takes Manhattan. I want to put out here. Is that much like Jason Takes Manhattan, the majority of this was not shot in New York, it was shot in Canada.
My God.
And because Jason Takes Manhattan actually has at least one scene that's shot in Times Square, there might actually be more of that movie actually shot in New York than this one. So I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was quite funny, given that people always like to complain that they don't actually shoot in New York. Yeah, most movies don't shoot in the actual places they're set in. It's fine.
Yeah, like I don't know. To me, it's like such a stupid thing. It's like, all right, well, hey, are they in a city with big buildings? Okay, that's New York. Like, sorry.
That'll do. Yeah, I agree. Look, they have a scene in the subway. They have apartment buildings. They have whatever. Like they've got enough things. I mean, there's no famous locations. Admittedly, they never.
Yeah, it's not like Ghostface is running around the Statue of Liberty or something like.
No, it means there's more to do in New York if they decide to stay there for the next one. But because I mean, I don't know how you justify like all of the surviving characters, whoever they may be, because we're not spoiled anything yet. How you justify them all being together if they're in a completely different location again? It's like, oh, everyone moved to Vegas for the next one.
I would watch that. That would be funny.
Because of course, once you've copied Jason Takes Manhattan, you have to copy Leprechaun 3.
Of course, they're just copying the masters.
Yes. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I want to say spoiler-free wise before we start getting into it. It feels especially hard to talk about a Scream movie because so much of it's. We never really mentioned Kirby's back, Hayden Panettiere from the fourth Scream. She was a bit of a fan favorite in that, and people were mad she got killed off. There was a hint in the last movie that she maybe survived, and here she actually is back.
I enjoyed her, and actually I was a little surprised. It did feel very like it did feel like maybe like a little cheesy and forced, but again it's kind of to me it's going back to like this little bit of a campy aspect, and I don't know, like I had fun with her.
There's one thing about how they do her character that kind of hurts. It hurts how much of her we can get, sadly, and we'll talk about that in spoilers, but I do think that one of the choices they made with her meant that we couldn't just like get her as much as perhaps fans probably wanted from her. But I think by and large I had a fun time. I don't think it's like a masterpiece. I don't think it's rewriting horror movies or anything. But at this point, when you get to number 6 in a franchise, what do I really want out of a long running horror franchise? I just want more fun kills. I want fun enough characters. And I think 3 of the core 4 are at least in that category, with maybe a couple of interesting additions this time, and just keep it fresh every time is really all I'm wanting. I
mean, I essentially, that's kind of where I am. Like, I'm not looking for them to reinvent the wheel every time, but like as long as you have like interesting characters and like the kills keep being good, like I'm along for this ride. I don't think they've confirmed a 7th one yet, but this one seems to be doing very well, so I'm assuming that
I
there'll
think
probably be some announcement.
I think it's making not the most money. I think it's actually the 5th out of the franchise to make over 100 million, so it's doing at least as well as most of the other ones, but I think it's doing it faster than some of the other ones as well. So I suspect they'll probably announce something. I think you'll get a 3rd movie of this, like, legacy
group, characters
group, whatever you want to call it. Your Scream Force Awakens. This is your Last Jedi. Unfortunately, whatever the next movie is better than Rise of Skywalker, because that was a turd. But yes, so I think we'll just give the spoiler warning then, so we can get into it. Because honestly, talking around everything in a Scream movie is a little bit tough. So we'll get into all the stuff. I suppose we should just start with the opening.
Let's do it,
because it's it starts with Samara Weaving. She has this big cameo, and it's almost because the first movie started with Drew Barrymore, who was a star, and it was kind of a shock that they killed her off. it's almost like this prestigious thing to get to be that character in a Scream movie, and so that's what they did with her here. Obviously, they worked with her on Ready or Not, and I was liking this opening even before the insane kind of thing that happens.
Me too.
Because it was like, okay, they're doing this thing where she's waiting for a blind date that she's, well, not maybe a blind date, but like a Tinder-esque kind of date, in a bar, and she's surrounded by people, and the guy calls her on the phone, and the whole thing is that the guy kind of lures her outside with relatively understandable, oh, I'm kind of lost, I'm looking for the bar, can you stand outside and wave at me or whatever, and ultimately it sort of like, he lures her into like this alley, at least a little bit into it, and you know, we find out that she's like a horror professor at a film studies class in the university, and it turns into Ghostface voice obviously and says, you know, you teach horror movies and you still walked into the dark alley, and you know, it's like, okay, this is kind of fun. It's like the idea of someone being killed in the populated city and surrounded by people. So even before it did the insane thing it did next, I was kind of thinking, they're still using the location quite well here to do a different kind of opening. I was kind of into it's establishing like how dangerous Ghostface can be like amongst the crowd of the mass city. And then of course it does that thing where Ghostface jumps out, kills her, and the camera just stays on Ghostface looking at her a little bit, that I actually kind of like guessed what was about to happen. I'm like, we're about to just see Ghostface unmask. It just the way it was timed, it just kind of felt like we were going to stick with him. And sure enough, the mask comes off and we see who kills her, and it's Flash Thompson from the new Spider-Man movies, right? And it's like, oh, and I was like, okay, you know what? That is legitimately surprising. You're doing something new with this opening, and I appreciate it. Now, ultimately, what it's really doing is that it's setting up that the real victim of the opening isn't Samara Weaving's character. It's this other potential Ghostface. Not even just this potential Ghostface duo, because we see when he gets home, he calls his roommate or whoever it is, and he's like, hey, yeah, did it, like the practice run went well, like we're gonna kill all these people, blah blah blah. And he's home and he's got stab posters on the wall, and he wants to finish what what's his name, Richie, that was the one from the last movie, what Richie started. He watches a little bit of Friday the 13th, I think part 4 if I remember correctly, on the TV.
I mean, I thought it was it wasn't Takes Manhattan on.
I don't think so. I want to say it was the bathroom scene from part, but it might be part 8.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because only like we both saw this like a little while ago, so yeah, it's a little hard to tell exactly, and it was like a quick scene, but. So maybe Takes Manhattan would have been a little too on the nose.
Joe, I thought this was basically. I thought this was a much better version of the opening, because the opening from 4 was like, oh, it's a Scream opening. Oh shit, no, it's actually the stab movie. And then here's the characters watching the stab movie. Oh no, it's a stab movie within a stab movie. I thought this was like a better version of that, where the gimmick of this opening is that we have 2 potential Ghostface killers, but then the real Ghostface of the movie kills them. And it's like they kill these guys because they're going to get in the way of our Ghostface plans. That's kind of funny that there's competing Ghostfaces and they have to take care of these like more amateur Ghostfaces at the start of the movie. That's actually quite a funny concept. It almost makes me wish that they went even further with it, and there was literally like, you know, there's always 2 killers usually, right? Except from 3. And this one technically, well, more than that later. But it'd almost be funny if they weren't related to each other and it was just 2 competing Ghostfaces.
Now, for sorry,
there you go.
Was there any second where you thought like, oh, like we might just know who the killer is the whole movie, or like did you pretty quickly? Because, I mean, I guess it doesn't take too long before he's back in his apartment and, like, you know, his phone rings and stuff. But I guess, like, was there a little bit where you're like, oh, maybe we're just going to know the killer from the start? Because that in and of itself would be a subversion to, like, you know, the tropes we've seen in these movies so far, which could be interesting.
Yeah, I think once it got back to his place, it was kind of obvious that he was then going to be killed in, you know, a typical Scream way. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I'm fine with that choice. It would have been really ballsy, though, to actually just straight up, like, because there's a moment, because when he's walking home, he runs into Tara, who's on her way to a Halloween party, and he kind of says hello and like, oh, is your sister going to be there? And it's kind of like, oh shit, she knows who this guy is. And I almost thought, wouldn't this movie be really exciting if we actually were following the killer and how they pulled off the plan the entire time? And I get why they might not think that would work for a lot of the audience, but for me, it'd make it the most interesting, like, the most interesting take you could do in like a slasher sequel is like, no, we're going to follow the killer, especially one where typically it's a whodunit and we don't usually know who the killer is, but to see them actually try and pull off the plan, and like it could almost be like a Dexter style thing where we're saying, okay, this is how they have to get to this point to that point. How did they get in there without anyone seeing? Let's see how they do that. How did the two ghost faces work together? Like, that would have been fun. I wasn't disappointed we didn't do that, but it did leave that little tingle. It was like, but what if they actually had the balls to just go through with that?
I think it would especially be interesting in these movies because, since there is usually multiple killers, it would be interesting to see like how, they tag team stuff, and it's like, oh, like which killer is killing here, and then like, sometimes when you see a killer like, show up to like the scene of the crime like right after to see like kind of how they do that. So that would be an interesting take, and who knows, maybe possible fodder for future entries. But there's one thing that kind of bugged me about this opening though, which I don't know if you noticed it.
It's been like a week. It's been a week and a half, Tim. You're going to have to give me some hints.
So when he goes to his apartment, like you were saying, he has posters of all these like horror movies and stuff on there. But what else he has? He also has posters of podcasts. He has the Last Podcast on the left, the We Hate Movies podcast. I was like, all right, so where's the screams after midnight?
Yeah, you hacks. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you not have us in your wall?
You telling me this guy is a horror fan with psychotic tendencies, and you're going to try to tell me he doesn't listen to our show? Like, come on.
Yeah, I don't believe it. That guy, we don't sell posters. Maybe that's the problem.
Well, he could have handmade it.
He could have printed one himself, sure, but we don't officially have a poster to sell, so maybe that's why we didn't end up on the wall.
That's a good point.
That's the only reason, obviously.
Oh yeah, only reason.
Yeah, so obviously this is a fun turnaround, and then from here we reestablish who all the characters are and whatnot.
Nod to DC Comics as well, finding the roommate in the fridge.
Oh yeah, his roommate got fridged. Yeah, very good. That might have even been a meta thing as well. Just the idea of fridging someone. Maybe it's not an intentional joke because we didn't know who that character was until we see him in the fridge. But still.
Or what other famous, somewhat. Oh, I guess you probably want to call it like a legacy sequel, but another famous later era sequel where a character ends up in a fridge, of course, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. So
yeah,
possibly a nod to that.
He's not dead in that though, just nearly.
Yeah.
So we see that Sam's in therapy, and with the worst therapist ever, who when she finally admits all the things that have happened to her and why she's kind of messed up, he just kind of gets scared and thinks she might be a killer. I guess he's like, I'm not qualified to deal with a crazy bitch like you. Please leave. But the big thing we learn is that, and this is an interesting take actually, they do this thing where the toxic online community have decided that she's a liar and that Richie was not the killer and that she framed him for it. And she gets a drink thrown over her when she's leaving the party later. She's constantly just being like recognized by strangers, and like it really wants to set up this idea that she is ready to snap and that the world at large like thinks she's a psychopath, and that's part of her struggle.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing that's kind of interesting that like these movies do, because since there's such later entries, like there's only so much like meta stuff about the rules of a horror movie you can do when you're like in the 5th and 6th entry of the movie. But what I think is kind of interesting is like they do these kind of meta takes, not necessarily on movies, but like on kind of like culture stuff like outside of movies. So like so maybe you're not like tacking on like a new rule about surviving like the 6th entry of a horror movie, but you do have like something to say about like movie culture or like toxic fandom and that kind of stuff, which I think is an interesting take. And then it is one of those things though where it is like, it seems like unbelievable to me, because it's like, well, it wasn't just like her that was there. Like, you had like other witnesses that could say like, oh no, those people were definitely the killers. Like, they were like, she was acting in self-defense and stuff. But I mean, I guess it's not that unbelievable with the things that people believe nowadays to,
Yeah,
to think that people wouldn't believe that.
it's ridiculous, but I actually completely think it's believable that there would be like a group online who think this, and it would spread these ideas, and everyone thinks she's crazy.
Like, can you believe that there are people that like actually don't like our show? Like, it's very hard to believe, but there are some weirdos out there that just, I don't know, they're just they're not well people.
I've never met someone who said they don't like screams after midnight.
I know it's hard to believe, but I've met them.
You have you? Live with them? Does your wife listen to the show?
And say she used to be a fan.
What turned her away?
She thought you got a little preachy in the last couple of years.
How dare she? You have to get a divorce, Tim. It's the only answer to this that I could think of.
I'm working on it. See.
So yeah, so that's where Sam is. Tara is just trying to be a normal college student. She wants to go to party. She wants to get drunk. Sam's being overprotective.
She wants to watch sci-fi movies.
What's funny is actually at one point in this movie, early on, someone refers to her as T, which is something I do sometimes with Tara, and it made me chuckle in the movie theater. I was like, oh, that's what I say, Tara. Oh dear. So you got them.
I thought this party scene was interesting though, because she's like trying to like hook up with this like obviously very like dumb like jerky guy, and I thought it was interesting of her like trying to be like, like everyone's telling her like, no, like you're drunk, like don't do it, and her being like, no, like I don't care, like let me make some mistakes. And I guess it kind of sets up the dynamic throughout the rest of the movie where Sam is like very overprotective, and Tara is like not really coping with like all the stuff that's like happened with her, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting moment. So yes, she's at this Halloween party, and this guy starts talking to her and getting her a drink, and then she's like, oh, I wish there was something else or something stronger or whatever, and he's like, oh, I've got a bottle of this in my room if you want to come up. And she clearly knows what he's suggesting with that, and says, what the hell, yeah, let's go. So she does make that choice. Now, so she makes a decision. Yeah, she's probably a bit drunk, but like she's making a decision on her own, and then her friends basically are like, maybe we don't let her do that, and then eventually they go get Chad, who's at this party, with his new roommate, Ethan, who's going to be a character that is immediately suspected as a killer because he's new by Mindy. So it's a sort of thing where it does kind of feel like everyone else is a little in the wrong for like just stepping in and being overly protective with her. Arguably though, Chad, because it obviously comes apparent as the movie goes on that he's got feelings for Mindy, you kind of get why he wants to step in and stop this from happening. But
actually, I thought they had like some nice chemistry too. I kind of liked their little, burgeoning romance.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. They had some cute moments. Yeah. So Sam shows up, takes her home. She actually tasers the dumb jock dude in the balls, which did feel a little excessive.
Probably. Like I imagine that has to do like some damage, but
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I can't remember how aggressive he started to get when he was getting cock blocked. Like maybe he was starting to sound a little angry or whatever, and maybe that's why it didn't feel as bad as it does in my memory. But but they go home, and we're introduced to. Well, we actually already seen her a little bit, but we have the quote unquote slutty roommate. So the two sisters have got another roommate named Quinn, who the running joke is she seems to have a different guy in her bedroom like a few different times throughout the movie, and that's kind of we're introduced to her, and her dad's a cop who's a character in the movie.
She actually had like a couple of funny jokes where like she'll say something, and you just kind of hear like the guy in her bedroom respond like, hey, what are you talking about, or like, wait, who? Like they're like, oh, I don't know, is that Randy in there? And then you just hear like the guy in the bedroom like, who's Randy? Like, and there's a couple of funny lines like that.
Yeah, there was a couple of gags. They didn't overplay the sexualization of it. It was mostly just kind of, I don't know, a running gag more than anything else. So yeah, obviously they see in the news there's a Ghostface killer and something's happened, and immediately Sam's like, Tara, pack your bags, we're leaving the city. Let's go. And
which is probably the correct response.
Yeah, but she's like, it's a big city. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to us, and obviously it's a Scream movie, so it's going to be, but it doesn't have to be. I do think it's funny though that the killers in this movie don't give a shit about Sydney and like the backstory of that. It's all just tied to what happened in the last movie.
Yeah.
So yes. When we get introduced to the neighbor character, who they're sort of, hey Sam, you've been staring at that guy across the window for weeks now. You should go talk to him. But it's revealed very quickly that they're actually already in a secret relationship.
Ooh, a secret relationship.
This actor playing Cute Boy, or Danny as his name is, I recognized instantly as Prometheus from Arrow. So yeah, I don't like being reminded of Arrow, admittedly, but that's what I know him from.
I know him from he played a pug on She-Hulk.
That's right, he popped up in She-Hulk as well. Yeah.
He was also on probably the thing I actually know him the most from is he was on this sitcom called The Other Two, which is actually a pretty funny sitcom, but that's actually where I first seen him.
Okay. So yeah, at this point, like, the sequence of events may be a little blurry in my mind because it's been like a week and a half since I saw the movie. So I think at this point we're going to talk about the overall kind of mystery and how they handle it, and the big set pieces that kind of take place throughout. Because the first big set piece, I think, is when they get called and then they end up in the store. Is that sound right?
That sounds about right. Yeah. Because I believe, like, you know, the cop is at the scene of the crime, and like he finds you know, like Sam's ID is like,
at the site of where the other ghost faces, quote unquote, were killed. Yeah. So she's a person of interest, and they want to talk to her. And
and whenever there's a kill, they always leave a ghost face mask.
Yeah, and they track it, and it's like Richie's from the last movie. And as the movie goes on, every time they leave a ghost face mask, it's like going back through the movies. It's like, here's one from 5, here's one from 4, one from 3, so on. Yeah. And the main ghost face running around has got like a cracked mask. It's like a sort of I think the implications might be it's the first movie's mask, because it looks a bit old, looks a bit dirty, and so on. But yeah, no, like, I think where the movie shines is the set pieces. It's, you know, it's like they get scared, they're walking down the street, they're on the call with the killer, and they run into a store after they
sorry. Well, it's just another thing too, where like they, you know, she gets a call. I think it says it's like from Richie. You know, so she picks it up, and obviously it's Ghostface. And you know, they're talking for like a little bit, and it's another, you know, I think kind of subversion where, you know, like I wasn't surprised that they would get a call this early on, but it did surprise me that like Ghostface does actually like jump out at them, like, you know, relatively quickly, and it's still pretty early in the movie, so I was actually kind of like surprised. I'm like, oh, like we're already starting, you know, with an attack right here. And then, you know, they duck into like this little bodega, which like you're saying, you know, the set pieces in this movie are kind of what make it stand out. And like, yeah, this opening one I thought was terrific. Like, it's just something I feel like you haven't seen before, and it's like, you know, most not even just like Scream movies, but, you know, most horror movies in general, you know, like when people are running away or getting attacked, it's usually like, you know, they're alone in the woods, or they're alone in the house, or they're like alone in a cabin, or like, you know, they're in these big empty spaces where, you know, you feel very lonely and desperate. And it's like here, you know, they're running into like a crowded store, there's lots of people there, and then like, you know, even the people are reacting like, you know, like, hey buddy, what are you doing? Like, you know, like, you know, F off and stuff. And it's just like a very interesting dynamic to see, you know, like a crazed killer, you know, working in this kind of environment. So
yeah, he comes in, he kills the owner, who tries to hold him up with a gun. Ghostface eventually gets the shotgun, and we get sort of the tense moments of like the sisters crouched and like, you know, hiding around all the aisles of the shelving, and Ghostface is looking for them, and it becomes very much this kind of, he's listening for the noises, and it's like every little noise, and I think Sam throws something somewhere to like distract them, and it's this tense sequence of like just barely getting away. If there's a slight critique, if you're thinking about it too much here, there is a slight issue with, like, it always feels like in these movies, like the killer or killers want the big third act reveal where they like reveal their plan to the main victim when they finally unravel everything, and it feels like, did they actually ever want to kill them here? Or are they just going through the motions to scare the shit out of them and killing other people around them so that it sets up for that bit? Because if they just kill Sam and Tara here, then all of a sudden, who are they going to confess to at the end?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I've never really thought about that, but like, yeah, like if they just went ahead and killed them, like what would they do? Like, all right, movie over?
Yeah, like the movie would be over if they just succeeded right here and now. Especially since I think it's especially glaring with this movie because like the Ghostface has this plan to keep leaving breadcrumbs from the past Ghostfaces, and I'm like, this is only like the Scream 4 mask you're leaving at this one. Like, your entire plan would be shot to shit if you kill both these sisters right now. So it's a minor thing if you think about it a little bit too much. So just just go with it. It's whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I will say,
I think like the stuff is like, it's exciting enough that like I think as you're watching it, you don't really think about it. Like a lot of the stuff that I find like very nitpicky about it, I don't think about while I'm actually watching the movie, because the movie does a really good job of keeping me entertained and on board. So there's only stuff that I think about after that I'm like, oh yeah, well I guess that doesn't really make sense or whatever. But they do a good job of keeping you entertained.
Yeah, and one of the problems that I had last time, and it's still here a little bit, is that sometimes, at one point in this movie, there's 3 characters tackling Ghostface, and Ghostface is still somehow like winning and like pushing them back, and I'm like, even if you're the strongest of the 3, yes, there's 3 in this one, like, I still don't believe...
Technically 5 if you count the 2.
Oh, the 2 ones that die at the start, yeah. Yeah, for a start, when the movie opened, like, you said you were thinking, oh, are we going to just know who the killer is the whole time? I thought maybe something they might do, actually, is that this is going to be like a We Are Legion thing, and, like, every kill's a different Ghostface.
Interesting, yeah.
Because I was thinking, is it going to be like an app thing where like people are just opting in to kill someone they like, and they're just like, well, we'll just all blame it on Ghostface, quote unquote.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. So, I will say this though. I do think Dermot Mulroney, who plays the detective who's the father of Quinn, I think he is really bad in this movie. He is chewing scenery at various points. He's fine when he's just generic cop dude at first, but when Quinn's killed after a set piece and he's like, I'm going to find this killer and I'm going to kill them, like, he's just chewing the scenery. And then later on, and we're in spoilers, when it turns out he is one of the 3 killers, he, like, every word he says in that third act is like, it's like, you're an actor doing theater right now because you're just chewing the scenery, and it, like, to a point where I wasn't really enjoying it. So that is probably my biggest negative of this movie, is that he absolutely just like he can't just act with some restraint.
Well, I mean, I can't really defend like the last third or whatever, but at least like when Quinn dies, I guess you could say that like
he's acting in the movie. I know.
Technically, he's a bad actor, but. I mean, I guess I don't disagree with you, but I guess it didn't bother me as much, while I was watching it.
It really stuck out. It's right after the when they're all outside after the big apartment part. And he literally just he was like 2 lines. He was like 2 words removed from every meta must die from the Flash, and it really gave me a chuckle. So I did like though that when they get taken to the police station after this, and they're very suspicious of Sam. And Sam's like, yeah, we're still leaving, let's go, Tara. And then the cop's like, no, you're a person of interest, you can't leave the city. And it's like, okay, that's an interesting way to get around that. Because she wants to do the smart thing. She wants to be the camera guy from Scream 2. And you're giving her a reason why she can't do that. So, okay, right, they can't leave. Actually, as far as callbacks go, there is one that I do kind of love that I think is quite funny and inventive. And it's when Gail comes to speak to them when they get out of the police station. And Sam goes to punch her, and Gail sort of like dodges it like Neo. She's just kind of like, and she's like, no, done that before, and then without skipping a beat, she gets punched in the face by Tara because she doesn't see the second punch coming. I actually thought that was legitimately quite funny.
That's funny, yeah. And then, like, you know, kind of saying before, like, yeah, it feels like a little weird to have, like, you know, like, I think in the last movie, you know, Gail says something like, you know, whether, like, you know, don't write a book about us or whatever. She's like, yo, trust me, like, I don't want to write any more books or whatever. And then, like, they have her again in this one being like, oh yeah, I wrote a book. And then also it seemed like, you know, the book, like, you know, seemed like pretty, like, harsh on, like, Sam and stuff, like calling her, like, unstable and everything, where it's like, well, if you're gonna write a book, like, can you at least be like, you know, flattery of the, or...
Don't get me wrong, the audience knows she's a little unstable because we saw her see Billy in her head, and we saw her like when she stabbed Rich at the end of the movie, she does stab him maybe a few too many times to be healthy, and she actually tops that at the end of this one. So, like, we know there's a reason to at least suspect it, because it does feel like they're telegraphing that in Scream 6 she could be at least the big red herring, if not the killer.
Yeah.
So we'll see what they do with that, but more on that later. Yeah.
I will say there was a little part of me that kind of, like, I had I wasn't like married to this theory, but part of me was like, I do wonder maybe if they might, you know, throw Gale under the mask there, like maybe if, like, you know, because you know, if she, like, cracked with the loss of Dewey in the last one, if she, you know, blamed you know, them for that and then wanted to get some type of revenge or something, but obviously doesn't pan out. But
yeah,
that was one of my theories.
So their plan after this is basically just to, like, hole up in their apartment, like, with everyone around them. So it's like it's an apartment. It's not that big, and they've got the core four, which is something that around this time in the movie, Chad sort of says, "Hey, we're the core four," and, you know, these others are fine, but they're not Woodsboro. Like, we can trust each other. It's all these new ones, the new roommate, the new love interest, like all these other characters we can't trust. You know, and almost immediately as well, I guess before this actually, where they have the conversation where Mindy's like, okay, we're not just in a requel anymore, we're in a franchise, we're in a long running franchise, meaning the legacy characters aren't safe, so it's not looking good for Gale or Kirby. You know, that was a funny line, but this is kind of where the movie catches his breath, and it's like, okay, here's our core group, and I'm glad they're all here. One of my big critiques of 5 is that it kind of chickened out of killing anyone who was remotely likable, and they all just turned out to be alive at the end. I actually do have a similar complaint at the end of this one, so
yeah,
we'll get to it, but so
that yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. So eventually, of course, Ghostface is coming to attack, and there's a whole thing where the neighbor across the street, like, he sees Ghostface in the room across, you know, across the window, and he tries to warn them and call them, and Sam ignores the call. I actually really like this set piece because, again, the apartment's a very different location for this, and there's so many of them together, and, you know, they try and fight back, but someone's removed all the knives. That's suspicious. Like, we don't have any weapons to fight back with. So, and
it felt like, I don't know, just them being so close and, like, talking, like, it you know, it felt very safe. And even like you were saying, like, yeah, it feels like a little bit of a wind down. It's like a breathing moment that it did kind of catch me off guard when, like, Ghostface, you know, kind of disappears out of nowhere, and then, like, yeah, and it's a nice, like, little visual of, yeah, the, you know, a sexy boyfriend seeing him across the street, and then, yeah, not being able to get in touch with anyone.
Yeah, my like, brain was thinking, okay, is this the movie trying to convince us that he's not the killer because he's witnessing this and try to help them, or is this, like, the movie, like, double bluffing us and, like, nah, he's really the killer, like, yeah. But yeah, they try and barricade the doors. It turns out Quinn's boyfriend's already dead in the bathtub. Like, he's, like, butchered already. And this is where it's Mindy's girlfriend who gets stabbed and is, like, dying. And ultimately their way out, because everything's locked and they can't get out, is the neighbor, Danny, puts a ladder across his window to their window, and they crawl over the alleyway in this ladder. So it's a really fun little set piece. I will say though, I have something I want to critique here, not in a movie way, but just in, like, a character way, is that for some reason, as soon as they set up this ladder to go across, right, and, like, Mindy and Sam are both holding, like, a chest of drawers up against the door to stop Ghostface from getting in, and, you know, the girlfriend, what's her name, Anika. She's stabbed and she's sitting there and she's bleeding out. For some reason, Mindy's like, okay, Sam, I'll stay back. I'll go last because someone needs to hold the door, or whatever. And I was like, okay, so let the injured person go first, right? And then Sam goes. She's like, all right, okay, I don't feel good about it, but I'll go. I'm like, why are you going first? Surely the injured person should go first. This feels a bit selfish on your part, Sam. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, but I mean, it makes sense because that's obviously you want to build the tension, and then that's the most obvious person that's gonna die. But that was a little weird.
How does it happen? Because Mindy definitely goes before she does, though. Because Mindy makes it over, and then obviously Anika's going last, and Ghostface starts rocking the ladder when he gets in, and she ends up falling to her death, which is a fun death. I think this movie definitely feels a bit more brutal than the last one. Maybe you can get away with more now, or certainly versus the old movies where I think they had to really tone the deaths down.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the last one was, the deaths were actually pretty, gory and bloody, but this one definitely feels like it, ups it quite a bit. And then
certainly 2 through 4 I would not describe as that gory. I feel like those are quite watered down as far as the violence goes. Whereas I think this one definitely felt like it was you're seeing a lot more stabbings, you're seeing a lot more blood and stuff.
But I mean, I thought this was great though. I mean, this is maybe my favorite kill of the movie, just because it's very different and inventive, and there's so much tension. I
think the key thing here for me, Tim, is that the opening has the holy shit, like we're unmasking the killer. This makes this scene feel unique. Then the store one where they go into the bodega. It's like, oh, now it's this quiet sneaking around as this, Ghostface has got a shotgun and he's just killed civilians on their way to get to him. That made that feel unique. And then this feels unique because of the confines of the apartment and then the going across the ladder to the other side. Like, each of the set pieces so far have felt unique for the franchise, but also just unique in and of themselves to the movie. So I think that's what makes this one fun and what kept the pace up for me. And like, it never felt like it lulled too bad, because every time we did get a big set piece like Ghostface scene, none of them just felt like they were phoning it in. I think actually somewhere before here there is a quick kill where he kills the therapist, I want to say.
Oh, right.
He stabs him through the door, but that's like just a quick
that was fine.
cutaway. It's not.
And it's a, it's not a short movie. It's about like 2 hours, and but
almost
there's so many like varying kills and set pieces, and it feels so unique that it does a good job that you don't really feel the length. It's kind of just boom 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 going from like place to place. So obviously everyone's distraught after this, and there's around here where they're trying to like think of a plan to capture him, and they're intentionally, there's a lot of parallels to Scream 2 in this, because they even compare it and say, okay, we're back in Woodsboro for the Legacy sequel. Now this is like a follow-up. This is like a legacy sequel to Scream 2. So we're following the main character off to college. And they try and do something similar like they did in Scream 2, where they try and track the killer on a phone. And like it's probably Central Park in this case. And it's very much like that scene in Scream 2 where Randy's on the phone. And they even reference him getting killed in a van, as like half the characters are sitting in a van, like with the police detective listening for the call and stuff. And the killer basically is like... Yeah, like when they trace the call, they actually find that the killer's actually at Gail's apartment, who they've kind of like ignored. And I'm realizing as I'm talking about this that I've skipped over a big scene because we must have already had the sequence where Gail shows them the hideaway that she found. Oh, right.
The stab slash. It's not even just the stab museum, because it's all the real like memorabilia from the kills. It's here's the TV that killed Stu in the first movie. Here's all the different Ghostface masks and costumes and all these other things from all the films. And Kirby's shown up at this point. I think she was interested at the police station. Yeah, and she's the FBI
she's like
now.
Working FBI,
yeah. The big thing with Kirby though is that because the movie wants us to be like a potential killer, it's like, oh, she could have snapped and become the killer. They kind of keep her at arm's length, which I think maybe diminished how much you could do with her. I mean, they have the moment where she bonds with Mindy and they're like, firing back some horror movie questions at each other, and that's a little bit fun. I can't remember who said 4 was their favorite Friday the 13th, but that's the one I agree with.
Yeah, one said 2 and the other said 4.
And 2's a good pick. Two's in like the top 3 for sure. So both good answers.
Yeah.
What was
They both like Psycho 2, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Because we've championed that movie in the past. Well, I feel like there was one example at the end of the list though that was a little weird to me. I can't remember what it was now.
Was it Candyman?
Oh yeah, it was the original or reboot, and they said both, and I'm like, nah, original's definitely better. But
yeah,
whatever.
I mean,
whatever.
you can like both, but I think it's kind of weird to be like, oh, no, they're both like the best. Like,
don't get me wrong, this is not as bad as Christmas Bloody Christmas when the character says her favorite. Was it her favorite Halloween movie? Was 6? It wasn't that. It was something like that though. It was like some batshit insane opinion. Maybe it was a Texas Chainsaw. It's like they really liked 4. I don't know. I can't remember. But go back and check that review for whatever my comments were.
That sounds familiar. Yeah. I did kind of like the dynamic between Kirby and Gale. I thought that was fun. I could have watched like a little bit more of them because, yeah, like she like obviously like because like she's treating her so like a little kid, and she's like, I'm like 30 now, but like even that like it feels like young to be an FBI agent.
It does. It feels young to be an FBI agent, but I guess they're telling us that she's a bit of a wunderkind. She gets so determined to stop killers after what happened to her that she just immediately, went down that path. It is funny though because I was thinking, Kirby's looking older in the last movie, and I'm like, but wait a minute, like, I mean, it was a decade ago, but she was like a teenager in it, so she can't actually be that old. And then she's like, yes, I'm 30, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're not that old, because that's the thing. Gale, Stewie, and Sydney are all in their 50s.
Did you say Stewie?
Dewey, sorry. There's a Stu and there's a Dewey, and I might have combined them. I apologize. So that's one of the.
They're old as shit.
Yeah, that's one of those weird things about legacy sequels is that sometimes, or even just long running franchises, like if you. I just reviewed the first Fast and the Furious on Collector's Cut. I just recorded that today. And it's like, holy shit, like everyone's so baby faced, and like now they're all like pushing 50 because the franchise has been going on for so long. It's just one of these things that happen with long running franchises now.
Yeah, it always like bumps me out, to be honest, like when you have like these like like long like running sequels or whatever, and they're like, guess what, like we're bringing back the original actor, and everyone's like, yeah, and I'm like, I don't want to see like some 80-year-old dude. I don't know, like I'm interested in the new Indiana Jones, but also like,
that was the exact example I was going to bring up, is Harrison Ford in his mid-80s.
Yeah, just like see him like gently jogging like away from like a boulder, just like very like mildly punching people, like whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, it's strange, but yeah. Also, it's kind of like, where's Hayden? Panettiere, whatever how you say it last
Panettiere,
name? Yeah. Penitentiary. But like, where's she been? Like, I feel like I haven't seen her in a while. Like, she's in a video game, but
I believe she was a main character on, is it Nashville TV show, which ran for several years.
All right, yeah, that explains it. Whenever you haven't seen an actor in a while, they're usually stuck on like some basic cable
TV show, yeah.
TV show they haven't seen. Like, usually it's like Yellowstone or something, but
yeah, I actually,
in this case it was Nashville.
I saw one of her first roles just last year. She's a little girl in the Denzel Washington movie Remember the Titans.
I don't remember that.
So that may be funny, Tim. That may be funny. So it's an American football movie. But anyway, she's like the little 7-year-old in it, and it was like, oh shit, that's Hayden Panettiere.
Is she a cheerleader?
No, actually, the joke is that she's a 7-year-old who's like one of the adult men who's screaming and like demanding plays and like, come on, ref, you asshole, and things like that.
Sounds funny. So of course I remember her from
Heroes,
the television show Heroes, a show we all love and never had any complaints about.
Very good. Yes, no one ever complained.
Did they try to do like a reboot? Did anyone watch that?
They did try to do a reboot. It only lasted one season. I tried the first episode. It was trash, much like Heroes after the first half of season 1. Yeah.
So was everyone just like, oh no, like we got the real comic book shows and stuff now. We don't need you anymore. Like, sorry.
Yeah, actually, looking at her IMDb, like she hasn't really been in anything since Nashville ended in 2018. She seemed to disappear for a while after that. Part of that's probably just the pandemic, admittedly, but yeah, I don't know, weird. But people wanted her back. She's back. I guess that's the other thing, is that because she's so serious cop lady, and like, they want us to think that she might be a killer. Other than that one scene with Mindy, there's not a lot of her like feeling like her old self, because she was the character in Scream 4 who was like, she knows the rules, she knows horror movies, she brings them up. There's not a lot of that from her in this movie, and maybe if they do bring her back again in a 7th, maybe they'll let her be herself a little bit more, because they're not trying to convince us, oh, maybe she's the killer this time.
Yeah, I you know, Scream gets touted for being like, you know, like the meta franchise, but honestly, like I always feel kind of like let down, like, you know, for like a lot of the meta aspects, and like I don't know, I would appreciate more like references and talking about it. I mean, maybe it'd be too much, like, you know, if they overloaded it or whatever, but like you're talking about that little scene where they're bonding and talking about like horror movies and stuff they like give me more of that. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be the entire movie, but I just feel like you know, for a movie that you know, or like a franchise that feels like it's kind of built on that stuff, like I feel like you really don't get that much in it.
Yeah, thinking back about it, do you think it's funny that Mindy never makes a Jason Takes Manhattan joke?
No, yeah,
it's a bit weird. It feels like it's obvious. They're just sitting there waiting to happen, and it never does.
There's that. I mean, yeah, there's obviously Jason Takes Manhattan, but you know, she could have maybe I mean, I feel like that would have been like, you know, the obvious one, but you know, she is you know, so learned. I'm sure she could like slip in like, you know, a New York Ripper.
Oh, or,
yeah,
very good.
You know, or even like I don't know, I guess Ghostbusters would be kind of obvious, but you know, plenty of other, you know, New York horror movies though she could quote.
Yeah, I suppose she could have said Midnight Meat Train when they got on the subway.
There you go, yeah.
This is some sort of train at midnight. And it's very meaty.
Very meaty.
Yeah, so anyway, so we were back and talked about the museum, but we can talk about that a bit more at the end, because they go back there for the climax. Sure. So yeah, they're trying to lure the killer with someone, you know, getting the phone call in the park, but they realize, oh shit, the call's coming from Gail's place, and they kind of like told her to get lost after she showed them this stuff. So we cut to Gail's apartment, which is like a, not quite a penthouse, but it's, you know, it's an expensive apartment in New York. It's, you know,
she's doing well.
I had a joke in my head actually. I was like, oh, that's finally an apartment in New York that it's believable that Courtney Cox's character can afford, because you know, in Friends, you know, they had this big apartment, and I know it was kind of left to her by an aunt or whatever, but the idea that she could afford that place as a struggling chef was ludicrous. Whereas here she's meant to be this, you know, reporter on TV. She's written books. She's famous. Yeah, she can afford this place. So, forgetting how the killer can even get to her apartment, I guess we just have to assume that the killer killed a bunch of like security or something on the way in the building.
You gotta imagine she has like primo, you know, security set up and everything. Like,
I mean, she survived 5 Scream movies before this. I feel like she probably does take her security very seriously. But she gets the call from the killer, who does kill her boyfriend, and the killer points out that the killer...
She doesn't seem to care that much about
She doesn't, does she? She's like, well, he was just like a boy toy after Dewey died. Dewey's who she cares about. There's a moment actually when she's talking to someone and they play a little bit of the Broken Arrow music that Dewey had in Scream 2. Down, 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 down. But the killer points out that the killer's never spoken to Gail on the phone before. Like, it's taken this long for it to happen. And part of me was thinking, okay, that's a fun little tidbit. Although I did see online, the killer did call Gail in Scream 2, but she never answered. It was Randy who answered. Oh, so just a little bit of the Scream trivia there for you, is that the killer did call her, but she never answered the phone.
Okay.
So, you know.
Now, I think this was like a fun scene, but it did probably feel the most like forced to me.
I think that's fair.
I'm trying to think now, like with knowing who like the killer reveal and everything is.
Why did they
like,
care? Why did they go after Gale? Yeah, it doesn't really make that much sense, other than just the shock value of it. I think my
like we got one mask left over. We can't really, you know,
we have to kill someone else.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's because she wrote the book about Richie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess that'd be fair.
Maybe that's the motive for it. So the thing is here, of course, is that she has like a panic room, and she sort of locks him out, and she tries to shoot him. She shoots him through the door. She tries to anyway, and she's very capable. She's obviously thought about this a lot because she's been attacked so many times. She goes on the offensive, which is neat. And she has this kind of defying moment at the end when she seems to be getting killed, where she's like, "You didn't win, asshole." You know, I can't remember the exact line is this, but it's like she says like, "Oh, you didn't kill me," or something.
She says, "Tell Sydney that he didn't get me."
Yeah. And I thought that was kind of a nice little moment. Like, I'm really conflicted over this scene though, for like a couple of different reasons, all coming from different directions. One is that you just killed Dewey in the last movie, so it feels like a little almost too predictable to kill off another legacy character in this one. But additionally, though, the fact that she does seem to be killed, and then at the end they just have a line that says, "Oh, by the way, Gail's in the hospital and she's fine." I was like, really? We're chickening out of
that? Yeah, which, I mean, we're gonna get into it, but
it's not the only one who survived somehow. But
yeah, it's not like. I mean, it's pretty much every character like, from this point onward, like. You know, like pretty much everyone here from to the end of the movie like should be dead and ends up not being, which is like you were saying before, the problem with it feels like it kind of pulls its punches and doesn't want to kill anyone that's too likable.
It's too scared to kill anyone. And the big one's Chad, because Chad he's the one who seems definitively he's definitely dead, because. And you know, I like the moment when this happens, because despite the fact that there's been 2 killers in every movie but 3. And then there's 3 in this one. It took until this movie to actually have both ghost faces on screen at the same time. And it felt like a big deal. It felt like a big deal that 2 of them were there and killing them together. That was actually kind of weird that we've never seen that before. But it felt like, no, he gets stabbed multiple times by both ghost faces. And it's right after he's kissed Tara for the first time. So they've had, so you know something bad's about to happen because they're having their happy moment. And sure enough, like, it looks like he's dead. And then at the end of the movie...
And it's quite brutal.
Yeah, and at the end of the movie... They look over, and it's kind of like the end of the last movie. It's kind of like the first movie with Dewey, and even the second movie with Dewey. And maybe that's what they're going for. They're going for Chad as the Dewey of this like Legacy series, where he's the one who seems to always look like he's going to be dead, and then pops up again at the end. But when they said, "Hey, look at that," and the camera goes over, and there's a stretcher, and they're pulling out him, and he's like on life support, I was like, are you serious telling me he's not dead again? And it's not that I actually like the character a lot. If I'm going to kill a character, it's Sam. Like, the other 3 are all more likable to me. But I felt like, really, you chickened out of killing anyone that was likable, because everyone who died was, you know, a minor character or an asshole. Like, that's basically it.
Yeah. Like, if you want to get into it, because, you know, I mean, we're pretty much there, but like, yeah, Gale, you know, ends up surviving. You know, I guess we're pretty much close to the subway scene.
Yeah.
The subway scene, you're pretty much, you know, it seems like Mindy isn't gonna make it.
Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, given that the person she's left with to help her turns out to be one of the killers. I'm like, wait, what? Why is she not dead? I mean, the subway scene's fun because they're trying to stick together. They all get in the subway, but there's too much of a crowd, so they get separated. And Mindy's left with Ethan, who turns out to be one of the killers. And it's cuts between the 2 trains that they're on, and then she's on. And the killers, you know, there's people wearing ghost face masks on the train because it's still Halloween time. And eventually,
a lot of nice Easter eggs too, with like, you know, tons of like horror.
Yeah, there's a Jason, there's a Michael, there's, you know, a bunch of different horror characters, which is cool. And eventually Mindy gets stabbed, and I was like, you know what, I don't believe you're going to kill her, so I wasn't surprised she didn't die. But they really need to like stick to one of the deaths, and they stuck to none of them. They all survived.
Yeah. Like and then so it's like, yeah, her, Chad, Gale, and Kirby, and like, because Kirby I thought would be dead as well.
And funnily enough, this one doesn't really count, but it is kind of funny that this is the first one that's actually faked to death, because Quinn, the roommate, the slutty roommate, dies in the apartment part, which we didn't even mention, I don't think. But then, of course, it turns out that she's the 3rd killer, and it's like, oh no, she faked her death, and because her dad's also one of the killers, like, he covered it all up and whatever. So,
but yeah, it's it's kind of tough because on the one hand, it does feel a little toothless to, not have at least one of these, characters die. It kind of feels like everyone has plot armor, or
because see, when they have that scene early on where Chad's saying, "Hey, we're the core four," and everyone makes fun of him, but then they start using it. As soon as he said, "We're the core four," I'm like, okay, one of you has to die. If one of you doesn't die, then it's kind of lame, because like you're establishing this as the core group. You have to shock us by killing one of them. So when it got to the end, and it's like, nah, he's alive. Everyone's alive. The core four. Like, don't get me wrong, there's parts of it that I still really like. I love that Mindy is pissed that she didn't guess the killer correctly in the last movie, and she's determined to do it this time. And I love that she shows up at the ending, even though she was like in a separate, like, she's in this thing in the train, and then because she gets injured and goes to the hospital, she's kind of missing from the big climax.
Yeah.
Which I did think was a bit of a shame. I'm like, why do we have to not have her for the entire last like 25 minutes? But I did think it was funny that she comes running in the aftermath, like saying, I figured it out, it's definitely Ethan, isn't it? And it's like, yeah, and it's also him, yeah. And the third killer was, third killer, no, I didn't get the third one. Like, that was funny. Her being mad at herself for not guessing the killer, because she's supposed to be able to know this shit, is quite funny. Yeah. So that's fair.
And so it's tough because, I do like all the characters, but so technically I don't want to see anyone die, but then it just feels like the stakes aren't there if especially if they're getting like brutally stabbed. Like, if you're gonna make them live, at least like, don't make it seem like they should die.
And Mindy's like one stab wound because he's trying to do it slyly on the train, but Chad gets stabbed multiple times. And multiple places.
His is so brutal. Like, they're just like, two Ghostface holding him, just like constantly like stab.
Yeah. So it is a bit toothless, and it's not even just Scream that this is a problem with. I said the same thing about Megan. I felt like, the characters who were kind of likable, and they weren't even that big as far as characters goes, but all the slightly likable ones all survived, even though it felt like they should probably have died. So it feels like just a current problem with horror movies that they're too scared to kill off likable characters, and I guess it's the problem where we want 100 sequels if it's successful, and we need to have characters to bring back, so we're too scared to kill anyone off.
I totally get it, but it's a problem.
So we have the subway sequence, which was a lot of fun, and Sam tells her boyfriend Danny to be like, hey, look, we have to just not trust you. And he's like, you know what? I get it. I'm the new guy. I'm the love interest. I'm going to hold back. And, and so when he runs in at the end. So they're basically playing on the boyfriend from Scream 2. Because, everyone thought Sydney's boyfriend in Scream 2 was a killer. And he ends up getting killed. Here it's a little bit different, where they kind of combined the cameraman and the boyfriend from Scream 2. And he just accepts that he should stay away because they can't trust him. And then shows up at the end. Yeah, he was fine the whole time. He was a good guy.
Yeah.
Plot twist. So... very good. So the big climax is they're going to do this trap. Kirby has this plan to trap, because the stab museum only has one entrance and exit, so they're going to like make a kill box and just lure the killer in. The detective guy is super about it as well. But also, this is also a flawed plan though, because if any of the people involved in the plan can't be trusted, then you're also putting yourselves in the kill box with the killer, which, would you believe it, is exactly what happens. And so we get a lot of them hanging around here, and like it tries to trick us and think that Kirby's a killer, then she gets stabbed, Chad gets stabbed brutally, as we mentioned, and when we get the big unmasking, it's the detective, Quinn, who didn't actually die, and Ethan and Quinn are brother and sister. They're the brother and sister of Richie, and the cop dad is the dad of Richie. This is Richie's whole family, and they're playing like Richie's homemade stab movies that he did as like a teenager, like on the screen, and their entire motivation is that they did this to their son / brother, and that's why they're doing this to Sam and Tara, and we get our big climax. The only thing I'll say is obviously there's a lot of monologuing here and whatnot. Sam and Tara fight back. They end up in the balcony. There's like there's a very literal moment where like Sam's holding on to Tara, and Tara's like, you have to let me go so we can both fight, and she lets her go, and that's the theme of the movie. She has to let her sister go and fight for herself, and they both like beat up the bad guys. I will say there's a moment where it's down to the last killer, and Sam ends up with a knife, and it does do a little bit of her seeing Billy and reflections and stuff, where he's like, yeah, go on, kill again, kill, it felt good. So she ends up stabbing, I think it's the detective, because he's last. She stabs him so many times that I started laughing, because she sort of got up and down his arms as well, and it's like, there's a moment where, like, just before she does that, I think, where Tara's kind of like standing there, and she kind of gives her the okay, because up until this point she's kind of like, no, we we're good guys, we don't do that. But Tara just shrugs and goes, you know what, F it, kill him, and gives her sister the go ahead to brutally kill the killer. And all I could think was, you know what, obviously at the end of these movies all the good guys end up killing the killer in like usually pretty violent ways out of self-defense. This is the first time where I do genuinely think the main characters come out looking a bit unhinged for just how brutal they go with all these stab wounds. And so obviously the tease at the very end is that, Sam looks down at the ghost face mask, and it's like, oh, is she starting to turn? Is she thinking about being the killer? And then someone says, hey, come here, and she drops it and goes with them. But there's no way they're leaving this untouched next time. Well, this is clearly going to be a big plot point next time, is that she might be going crazy or whatever.
I wish they would have had her hold on to the mask. I would never really think that she would become like a full-on bad guy, but I think it would still be like an interesting dynamic to at least show that there's like a temptation, or
I hope she does,
an interest,
I hope she does, just because I think it's the most interesting thing to do. Not necessarily because it makes sense, the most sense for the character, but one of my favorite things that they almost did was Scream 4. Like, I loved that it felt like the killer was about to get away with it, and I thought that was super exciting. Just like the start of this movie, it was exciting to just have the killer unmask. Like, this movie does definitely do more ballsy things in some respects than some of the other movies. But I would love for it to be like, no, the main character from the last two is the killer now. Like, actually commit to it and just do it, because I think that would actually be interesting and a breath of fresh air again. Much like the setting of this one's a breath of fresh air, I think next time if they actually go through with it, although because it's so choreographed from this one, it's probably not going to be the case. They're going to make us think she is, but oh no, like someone's framing her or something, Yeah.
The I guess we'll see, but I guess there's still at least enough there, like with kind of like the looming specter of Billy and everything. But the
Sam Loomising specter, or Billy Loomising, I should say, because it's not Halloween. But no.
One a little probably nitpick you have with the story there is it does seem a little unbelievable that no one has ever seen like Richie's family before. Did she not, she never knew or seen any pictures or anything when they were going out, or Gail when she wrote the book about it, she didn't do any research to maybe see maybe to interview this guy's family or something. It seems a little implausible.
I can buy at a certain point that Sam just never get introduced to the family and maybe didn't meet them, but given the fact that this killings in Woodsboro was heavily this is the sort of people that would be on the news talking about their loved one, and the fact that he's a killer, and you're right, Gail absolutely doing research about who the killer was should have found his family. So that is a little bit far-fetched, and you just kind of have to go with it. Obviously, they really want to make the comparison to Scream 2, because in Scream 2, Billy's mother was the killer, or one of the killers, and they wanted to do that again here.
And then it's been it hasn't been as long as for me to see it, but I can't even really remember how the other two kids died. Didn't one of them they smashed their head with the TV, right? Is it Kirby that throws the TV? No, that sounds,
maybe it was, I can't remember. It's been a week and a half since I watched this, so some of the details of the fight are a little bit fuzzy.
I want to say I want to say it's Quinn, but I guess it could have been Quinn or Ethan, but I think one of them is screaming and running towards them at the end, and one of them takes the TV and smashes it with it.
It's the kind of the joke thing where you think they're all dead, but one of them has to get back up moment, and it's one of the younger ones comes running at them, and the TV gets thrown at their heads, and it's Kirby, because she says, oh, I saw that in a movie once. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the final, like, the violence in the final set piece is fun enough, but it's definitely my least favorite of the movie. Like, I thought the apartment scene was more fun. Yeah. The train scene was more fun. The store scene was more fun. The opening was more fun. But I mean, the fact that I have 4 big set pieces that are really enjoyable throughout and some likable characters means that it's a pretty easy to watch horror sequel. You know, I was mostly having fun. Yeah. I still think the whodunit aspect of Scream is the thing that I could leave behind if they ever want to just like make Ghostface more like a Jason, where he's just like supernatural Ghostface is coming after them.
I mean, I wouldn't be against it, because I mean, at this point it's like there's only so much you can do that. Yeah, if you just want to turn him into ghost of Ghostface or whatever. I mean,
there's a few things that we've mentioned that they can do to make it feel fresh. They could have an X-Men character be the killer. They can actually do that for once. They can.
Did you say X-Men?
No, X-Men character.
I thought you said X-Men. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Main
bring Nightcrawler in here.
Okay. They can. I said that the thing where it's like a bunch of different people all just doing one kill each. Like maybe they could do some of that.
Yeah.
But it would almost help the meta thing if they do like number 7 or 8. It's like we're going slightly supernatural, because most franchises, like, because Friday the 13th didn't start with a supernatural Jason killer. It was meant to be more grounded, and then just because they had to keep coming up with ways of having the killer come back, it became supernatural. Same with a lot of slasher franchises. So it would actually be quite interesting if it's like, no, straight up, like the resurrected Billy's the killer now. Like he's just back and he's supernatural. It would be very ballsy, and I can see why they'd chicken out of doing it, because they think a lot of the audience would protest. But as a horror movie fan, I actually think it'd be hilarious to do that. But yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, man, it's like the internet ruined everything, because like before, like I feel like in like the 80s or whatever, like they could get away with doing like crazy crap, because like they wouldn't have like 10,000 people tweeting at them saying you ruined my childhood or whatever. Like
that's yeah. I'm sure there was some bro in 1986 who's like, "Oh, you made Jason supernatural. You ruined my my childhood." Mrs. Voorhees means a lot to me. Stupid internet or stupid movie writers.
It would be like a really interesting pitch is to, just have do a new one with just like a ton of suspects, and then at the end it's just revealed to be like someone like no one knows. It's like,
that would be funny. Yeah.
It's like, it's me, Gary. Like, okay. What's up?
That's funny. Or they take off the mask and it's like a character from a different movie. It's like it reveals that it's connected to a different movie universe.
Sweet dreams, bitch. Like Freddy.
Well, I wasn't thinking Freddy. I was thinking like, I don't know, someone from a different, like, what if it was the main chick from You're Next? Like, she unmasked. It's like, yes, after the house was attacked and I had to kill a bunch of people, I got a taste for it. So I thought I'll become Ghostface. That would pop people like us, but the mainstream audience would be like, well, who's this character? What's she from? I think it's funny, because I'm kind of like, people are probably going to think that we're making like contradictory statements here a little bit, and I want to just explain where I'm coming from here. Is that I'm all for them leaning into silly if they just embrace it. I think part of the convoluted nature of Scream, and to an extent like stuff like Saw, but is that it feels like they want to they want to over explain everything to prove that they're smart and that everything works, but it clearly still doesn't. So it comes off silly in a way that feels disingenuous. Like they want to say, hey, we thought about all this and all this stuff works and makes sense. But it actually comes off feeling more silly sometimes as a result. Whereas if you just go actual silly with it and do Ghostface in space, I'm like, well, I can't critique that, because we're just doing a silly fun premise. Let's just go for it. It. Yeah, let's do Space Station Ghostface.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem with like a lot of stuff nowadays, is like everyone wants these like long convoluted explanations, and there can't be like anything that's like left open. And like that's one of the worst things about when they do these legacy sequels, like whenever there's like like a movie from the 90s and then there's some internet meme about like, well, how comes this character never did this, and then they do like a legacy sequel, and that's like one of the first things they have to address.
You have to explain
it's always so annoying. Yeah, you don't need that stuff. And then when you think about movies like like Jason Lives or whatever, where it's just like, Oh yeah, how the hell did he come back? Oh, they stuck him with like a fence post and lightning struck it, and that's it. Like, yeah, that's all the explanation you need. Okay, cool.
Yeah, or honestly, even something more believable that they could do, and I would love, is if they get to the scene in Scream 7 and the killer explains their motives and it's this convoluted thing and they're taking it seriously, for the killer to just start laughing and go, no, I'm just a stranger who feel like killing people. I don't have a single motive. Like, almost to go meta in the sense of making fun of the franchise's own like tropes and its own kind of like negative qualities. I actually think would be quite refreshing as well. There's a lot of things they could do. They still seem kind of like married to taking it relatively seriously. I mean, there's definitely a fun vibe to this, don't get me wrong, and I think I like it a bit more than 5 because it does feel a bit more fun. But as far as like just keep going and keeping it feeling fresh, I think like any number of things that we've suggested in the last like 15 minutes would be a fun way of doing it.
Now, did you hear the little like it's kind of a quick thing, but I think someone brings up like Stu Macher, and then like, you know, one of the like oh, like Stu Macher died or whatever, and one of the characters like, oh, if you believe he died, or like something like that.
Matthew Lawrence coming back, you think?
Yeah, so because I know that's like something I've seen, like, you know, fans online, you know, want to see him come back, which is like kind of weird because it's like, well, I'm pretty sure he's dead, but I felt like that was like a little nod to, you know, what people saying that, but then also like, you know, the last movie seemed like a little nod to mention Kirby, and then they brought Kirby back in this one, so who knows, you know.
I think there is kind of a problem here where franchises just can't let someone stay dead. So you got, like, I just mentioned earlier that we were started doing the Fast and the Furious movies and Collector's Cut, and that franchise is notorious for just bringing people back from the dead.
So I made the same comparison to my friend when I saw this. I was like, is this the Fast and the Furious of like horror movies? Because it's like every movie is like bigger than the last one, and they're always bringing back like some random character from like 3 movies ago that you didn't even like remember or care about.
Yeah, it's not even
and
just...
it's all about family now.
And it's not just that they're checking out of deaths in the movie. They're somehow retconning deaths from like 4 movies ago to justify someone coming back. And it's a problem that a lot of like long-running TV shows and movies have had in the past, where they want to bring back a fan favorite character, but we're getting to the point now where one franchise is doing it multiple times, like back to back, and it's like, death means nothing in this world anymore. And it's a slasher movie. It should mean something.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So, on the one hand, I think it'd be funny to see it, but on the other hand, I kind of, the back of my brain's going, yeah, but like, can we not just let some people stay dead? Like, there's a cynical part of me who would, I think, be a little annoyed at that.
I agree, yeah.
So, it just kind of depends what they do. I'm okay with the, Billy being seen in her head. Although, even though it wouldn't make much sense, I kind of wish to just let him be his real age, because I think the biggest problem I have with it is the de-aging, like dodgy CG to make him look young like the first movie, because he just doesn't look like him anymore. He looks weird.
And it doesn't bother me that much. I feel like maybe it's hidden enough, like, because it's, you know, it's usually like in like kind of like reflective surfaces or something where it's like, you know, it's never like just like he's standing right next to her talking, you know, like and that looks like there's enough separation for me. But
yeah, in this one it does. In the last one, it might still have been technically reflections, I think, but I think it was like more... It
didn't look as good.
But it was just like a straight up mirror, so it was like clear as day.
Oh yeah.
Whereas here it's on like a, you know, just a bit of glass, so it's kind of faint, and you can, you know, they try to obscure it a bit more here. Maybe they saw the complaints from the last one that he looked a bit too shit, so they're trying to hide it a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, in general, like, de-aging never really... It always like looks kind of weird. Even if it looks good, it looks like weird. So
there's a disconnect, yeah. Even when it's technically a good version of it, it still has a little bit of a uncanny valley quality to it, yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's the movie basically. I you know, it's a fun time. Like, I don't think it's an amazing movie. I think it's a solid slasher sequel with fun set pieces, and as if I'm comparing it to the other movies, like, I like it more than 5. I obviously definitely like it more than 3 because 3 is shit. I might like it more than 2, honestly, if I'm going head to head.
I mean, controversial, maybe controversial, because I know like people seem to love 2, but I'm not the biggest fan of 2. Like,
I think 2,
it's fine, but
even though this movie's probably about the same length, I think 2 feels more bloated to me for some reason. I think Scream 4 is an interesting one because I really like the last like chunk of Scream 4, but I think a lot of it suffers from feeling less of a horror movie. It feels like they're not even trying to have suspense for most of it. So I think Scream 4 is kind of a mixed bag, even though I really like a couple of the characters in it. Like I love what's her face from Scream Queens, who's
Emma Roberts.
Emma Roberts. I think she's great. Obviously Kirby's a fun character. Like there's some great characters in Scream 4. But I don't think it necessarily holds it. So I think the original Scream is the best. There is an argument to me that this might even be the second best, just because it's just it kind of like it's still taking itself somewhat seriously, but it feels like this one's more just about having some fun with the different set pieces. And I think at this point for me, because I don't care about the whodunit as much and the convoluted reasons for things just kind of annoy me, this one offered me more and didn't let that stuff get in the way of just having the fun as much. So while there's definitely complaints to be had and there's nitpicks to be had about them chickening out of killing characters and so on, so it still feels like a franchise movie in that sense, I definitely had more fun with the actual, just the scene to scene of the movie, you know?
Oh no, totally. And I mean, it's not a surprise that I really like this one, because I really like the last one. And to me, it's just taking the last one and like the last one, like you set up a lot of characters, and this one it's like, all right, well, now that we know the characters, we can just have a lot of fun with them. And they do it by like introducing like a lot of a new location with lots of new like fun set pieces. And so to me, it's just kind of like taking a lot of the stuff that I liked about the last one, but just like amping everything up.
I do wonder, actually, first thing, would you say you like this more than 5?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I still like 5 quite a bit, but I definitely like it more though.
I do wonder if I go back and watch 5 again, which I'll probably do at some point.
I did rewatch it before I went and saw this one.
Oh sure, but
it still held up for me.
Yeah, but I mean, like after I've seen 6, if I'd like it a little bit more, because maybe I've just grown more attached to some of the characters a bit. Maybe maybe I just like it more as part of a set rather than just because when it was on its own, it was like my biggest problem with it's probably still going to be the legacy
stuff.
Characters that are kind of forced into it. Like I don't know if I need some of that, but yeah, they definitely toned down the Sam stuff in this one, which was good. She's still the one that's kind of been focused on to an extent, but I think one of the things that this movie did is that they realized that Jenna Ortega is becoming a bit of a star, and they gave her more to, because in the first not the first movie, but in Scream 5, she's kind of the character at the start, and the shaking things up was that she didn't die. She survived the opening scene, and while I was critiquing that movie for like not killing everyone that should have been killed, I do think like having the opening person survive that, it was an interesting twist on the formula, so props to that. But because she was in a hospital bed, because she was kind of separate from everyone else, it felt like she was definitely secondary to Sam. I feel like in this one she felt a bit more leveled up, and I think it's because obviously since Scream 5 came out, they've seen her. Obviously she was great in the last one, but they've seen her in X, they've seen her, I mean, Wednesday was probably, this movie was probably a long shot by the time Wednesday came out, but I think someone probably noticed, hey, out of the 2 sisters, this is the one who's actually becoming a star. This is the one who's actually getting other work and becoming more of a name, and especially in the horror world, like she's becoming a modern Scream queen. So it makes sense that they did more with her this time. Like I think because the last one you didn't know who the core 4, quote unquote, were. Like some of them felt more important than others. I think in this one they did make it feel like those 4 were all prominent and not maybe completely equal, but much closer to being equal as far as importance goes.
It's and I think they gave both of them like pretty good arcs. I feel like they actually felt like they had like some growth and stuff in this movie. So I'm definitely interested to see where it goes. I am glad that they didn't have Sydney in this one, because I feel like you really don't need her, but I am curious what their plans for her were, because I do think they said early on that they significantly had to change the script. Like,
I don't know.
Curious what that would have been.
Yeah, I kind of just hope she stays away. Like, I know the reason why she's not here is because they weren't offering her enough money, but honestly, like, I think the movie would be better off just not bringing her back. Like, let her have her happy ending.
Her story's done. Like, I know, she was in 4 and everything, but honestly, like, 3 is a really bad movie, except for, I think the ending, she has a very good ending. Like,
oh yeah, she's willing to let the door be unlocked at the end because she's not scared anymore. Yeah, it's kind of the perfect ending for her in a lot of ways.
Like, even though I do like 4, yeah, they didn't need to bring her back. Like, if they would have just left her there, that would have been nice.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm curious to see what they do with 7, especially if they, since this kind of mirrored 2 in a lot of ways, did they try and mirror 3 with 7? I don't know what to do with that, but
yeah,
good luck.
Interesting.
Because I think 3 is easily the worst one of the entire franchise, and
100% agree. The thing is, going to New York felt like so fresh and gave them an opportunity to have so many interesting places and things they could do that it kind of makes me wonder, like, okay, so is this going to be a formula now? Like, are we going to change up like locations for the next movie too? But then if that's the case, then it's like, where do you go? Or if it's like, well, or do you stay in New York? I don't know.
Actually, I just thought of a solution. Yeah, I was joking earlier that it'd be hard to say why all 4 of the core 4 are together for something. What would be believable to get them all in a different location again would be that it's not like a permanent thing. They're just all on a trip together somewhere. So maybe
like a vacation.
Yeah, they all go to like a ski lodge, and that's where Scream 7's set. Something like that.
Oh, a Christmas.
Yeah.
Movie. That would be good.
Christmas Scream. I think that would be like a way you could do it. Like, it's not like. Yeah. Obviously, them sticking together is fine, especially since we've got a pair of sisters, and now Tara and Chad are probably a couple now. So, and then obviously his sister's Mindy. So, but the idea that they all move together to a permanent new place, or they all move back to Woodsboro, is starting to like, okay, it's kind of weird that you're all sticking together. Like, siblings can move apart. Like, that's a very normal thing. So yeah, maybe that's how you do it. Is you have them all doing something together, like a trip, or Ski lodge is the first thing I thought of for whatever reason, but you could pick anywhere. They go to Paris together. Yeah,
Christmas break or spring break. Either one.
Yeah, call it Stream Break.
Oh, that's a good one.
There you go.
I like that.
Yeah, have them at the Eiffel Tower. We can get Ghostface chasing them around Paris.
There you go.
Maybe Ghostface will even speak French to them on the phone.
Ooh la la.
What is your favorite scary movie? And yes, that's just an accent. I can't speak French. I can't do a Ghostface impression in French because I can't speak French.
Well, who can nowadays?
So, yeah. I suppose we should rate the movie then, Tim, and wrap up. No?
Yeah. I really like this. Sounds like I'm getting choked up. I had a total blast. Again, I really like the last one, and this one, it just is kind of reaffirming everything I liked, and then just doubling down on it and giving it more, including some more interesting set pieces and deaths that I just had a really fun time at the movies. And again, there's lots of little story points and beats that are very easy to say, like we're talking about, the very easy to nitpick and stuff, and like we talked about it quite a bit, but it's one of those instances where the movie is so fun that that stuff really didn't bother me while I was watching it. So yeah, the little minor stuff like that didn't affect my enjoyment of it. I think I gave the last one like an 8.5 if I remember correctly.
Might have been a bit high in the high side there, Tim.
Yeah, I still really like it, but I would probably bump that down to like an 8 or 7.5. But I'll give this one an 8.5 because again, I like I said, I had a blast, and I liked it more than the last one. So I'll give it. I'll go as high as an 8.5. I mean, I'm. Again, like I said, early on, like, a couple of years ago, I wouldn't really have considered myself like a huge Scream head, but I don't know, these movies have been really working for me, and I'm, it's interesting to see a franchise that, it's not like I didn't not care about it, but it's just something that wasn't hugely on my radar, but it is something now that I'm just like, ooh, if I hear more about it, like, ooh, another Scream movie, I'm getting excited now.
Yeah, like I'm not going to go as high as that. Like I think what did I give the last one? Like a 5.5, something.
I think so. Yeah,
something like that. I think for this, you know, I'm in just sort of fun horror sequel territory. I think I'm happy to give it a 6.5, which, you know, I think is a solid fun time. Like, and I give it that rating in the same way that I've given some of the Friday the 13th sequels ratings that are in that ballpark, where I enjoy these movies. I can see me watching this again and mostly having a good time with it. And if we are going to do like horror franchises going up to silly numbers as far as sequels goes, like I do have a soft spot in my heart for that. If they can, you know, keep being
totally,
fun,
yeah.
you know, because I love Friday the 13th, I like Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, I like Halloween. Obviously quality varies wildly as you go up and down the numbers, but I think I am kind of on board to just let them do another one now and just be like, okay, sure, give me Scream 7, let's see how it goes. Don't get too fancy with the title though. I was so glad they just numbered this. I mean, they did the thing where it's part of the title, but it's still Scream 6, right?
Yeah.
That said though, they should probably stick to Roman numerals now that they've switched, much like Friday the 13th did.
Yes.
So yes, but there you go, that's Scream 6. So yes, it was nice to be able to squeeze this in whilst Tim's now juggling two babies, literally. How is just for the audience? How is the newborn?
She's doing good, well right now. I mean, when they're this young, they really don't do much. They just kind of eat and sleep.
They're just a blob. They're just there. They consume.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah.
Is her big brother going all Sam Carpenter on her, being like, "I'll protect you, my sibling"?
He luckily he is very fond of her, so it is very cute to see him like be like, oh, like, you know, little sister, like, oh, let me hold her and stuff, and you know, instead of being jealous or anything like that, like when you're kind of scared that they, you know, might be resentful or something. But no, he's a very loving big brother.
Nice.
Yeah, the only thing that's been challenging is like we've just constantly, like, everyone has constantly been sick. So that's been the biggest hurdle. It's as soon as like it's like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, Wyatt will get sick and then he'll get better, but then they'll get me sick and then they'll, you know, get my wife sick, and then
is Wyatt going to like daycare and like that just now? Yeah, that's so he's probably bringing a lot from other kids home then.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, because it all started like, and if you go back and watch the episodes, you can probably see me start to get like more and more coffee and congested a couple of months ago, because he started going to school, and once they go to school, they just basically become germ factories, and everything they bring home.
I think once they reach about 8 or 9, their immune systems like developed enough that they start fighting it off a bit more. But you've got a few rough years ahead of you as far as illnesses go.
Yeah, it's not fun, especially after like the pandemic, where like, you know, we didn't really like go out that much for like 2-3 years, so we had like no contact with anyone, so it's just like, oh yeah, we'll never be sick again. And then but no, I mean, other than that, you know, everything's going well. My parents were visiting, so they were babysitting, so that gave me a chance to sneak out to the movies.
No, it's nice. It pushes all of our pre-recorded episodes back a slot, so they last a little bit longer, which is nice. And we don't want to promise anything, but there is a chance there'll be one more sneaky new release. Yeah,
there's a big one coming out just in about a month. I'll probably find a way.
Did you see the leaked Rotten Tomatoes score for it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of the reactions from the you know, whatchamacallit, the I guess preview, or not preview, like the premiere or whatever.
It was at South by Southwest. We're talking about Evil Dead Rise for anyone who's not following the conversation.
I mean, you know, it sounds great. Like, and it sounds like maybe like some people had like some story nitpicks, but that was like easily outweighed by the fun deaths and amount of like gore and blood, which, you know, is kind of what I'm expecting.
I think what I'm impressed by
hyped.
is that the general consensus I'm seeing is that it continues in spirit of what the last one was, and I'm excited by that because I loved that last one. So I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, hopefully we can eke out a review of that not too long after it comes out as well. But otherwise, you know, Tim's still on paternity leave. We're still just, you know, putting out the episodes that we banked up before he went off. He'll be back later in the year properly, but But no, it was nice to get a big release. I mean, it's one less thing to catch up on when you come back later, I suppose, as well. Yeah. Which is also nice. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, who knows if there's any if I can't think of any other. I mean, besides for Evil Dead, I don't know if there's any other huge ones. But
the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is there's a new Insidious in the summer.
oh, okay,
Admittedly, by that point, it may be getting close to when you're coming back anyway. But
yeah,
yeah, and then obviously there's maybe a new Exorcist in October, but you should definitely be back for October, I would imagine. So.
oh yeah, it's funny because I was almost still doubting that one because like I feel like we hadn't heard anything about it, and then all of a sudden one day like I saw like a headline that was like, all right, filming has wrapped on the new Exorcist.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, what? Like,
Joe, it's the opposite of the new Ghostbusters movie, because Ghostbusters, like Afterlife 2, whatever you want to call it, it's got a release date in December, but they just announced this past week that they've hired a director and they're going to start shooting for like 2 months. I'm like, what? There's no way that's coming out at the end of this year.
Jeez.
So yeah, but hey, so yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this Scream 6 discussion. You know, because it was hard to.
Well, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Oh well, I mean, it's I guess yeah, technically not a movie, but probably the next big horror thing will be Resident Evil 4 in a few days.
Oh God, I'm so. Yeah. I mean, by the time this goes out, I it probably will have already. Yeah, because this will go out Patreon tomorrow, and then it'll be public on Friday. So by the time you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the public release, I'll be playing it already.
I pre-ordered a physical copy, and then I'm pretty sure that they like ship it so that it arrives on release day. But I'm starting to get nervous, so I'm like, oh, do I have time to like switch it to like store pickup so that I can make sure that I want to have it? But I'll see.
Did you play the demo, Tim?
No, not yet. I mean, I don't understand the.
But it's.
Well, like to me, like the demos are so weird because it's like people are like, we got this demo, and like to me, it's like, all right, well, I'm getting the game in like a week. Like, why?
Because you,
like,
you want a taste.
Play it?
You want a taste. Like, cause,
I mean, I'm already buying it.
I
like,
know. But like now I'm going into the full game knowing how to parry stuff with my knife, which makes you feel like John Wick. Oh, nice. It's great.
That's awesome.
You parry with the knife, it stumbles them, you can run up and kick them. Oh, it's good stuff.
I can't wait.
No, I'm looking forward to it. So yes, 10 minutes of off-topic stuff at the end, but it was at the end, so I think that's okay. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. This has been Screams After Midnight. Hopefully you've had a good time. We'll see you soon with the next episode. The next episode you're going to get after this, I believe, is the original Exorcist. So that's a biggie. So look forward to that. It was going to be in this slot, but then we did this, so I don't think you'll be mad that we bumped everything back a couple of weeks. So so let us know what you thought of Scream 6 in the comments. You can of course support all the content by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting us on a monthly basis. Obviously our bonus content's on pause, but there's a back catalogue to enjoy, and there's obviously bonuses from both Collector's Cut, which has 2 bonus shows, and same with Ace. And when Tim's back full time, we'll have 2 bonuses back again as well on a monthly basis. So go and have a look, see if you're interested, and support all the content. But that is the show, so thank you once again. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies. What's your favorite scary movie?
Sure.
Have you watched the porn parody yet? It's called Cream 6.